Dimensionals. Welcome back to Demo, the show where we demo the demos of the latest games coming to PC and consoles near you this year. Today we're taking a look at Dimensionals, a turn-based creature collector / deck builder style team battler, a la early JRPGs like Final Fantasy, where the player amasses a slew of various and creative heroes to fight off the evil threats plaguing the galaxy. Let's take a look. Man, graphically, this game is one of the most well-designed games in this genre I have ever seen. Even beyond genre, I haven't seen animation of this quality in recent memory. On a visual level, Dimensionals is definitely shooting high in its character designs and attention to animation principles. I cannot stress enough how much style this game oozes. The entire thing from soup to nuts is drenched in a unified visual identity that screams upbeat anime show. It gives me the feeling of shows like Wakfu or Ben 10, or more contemporaneously, something like a Steven Universe or even the Owl House. I am a grown man, I did have to Google this part. But man, the fluidity of the animation, the creativity of the environment and creature design, it's all very on par with a large-scale cartoon production. The card designs also remind me of the Pokemon trading card game or Marvel Snap, with awesome layers of detail and eye-catching rarity qualities that would entice any kid looking to collect all the coolest ones available. This game's style choices are nothing to scoff at, and I would not be surprised if Mino Games had some bigger plans behind the curtain with this IP. The UI, while mostly beautifully designed, just somehow gives off a confusing feeling when trying to read important information, as I found myself not even sure of how much mana I had during my turn, only to realize it was this rather quiet meter on the bottom where my eyes didn't feel drawn to, and is easily missable for what is a rather important thing for the player to pay attention to. Other than some out-of-place menu prompt designs, the overall look of the display cards and iconography is top-notch, if not a little overblown in places. The fight song for the intro of the tutorial campaign is an upbeat hero rock theme, with a fast-paced cymbal 4 drum beat, pumping synths, and chugging guitar flicks to keep the heart rate up and the action in focus. The song is on a constant loop and never relents while you are going through the paces of learning the ropes, and it would be nice to get a little break or variety from the never-ending sprint. My ever-anxious drum legs were tapping along to the beat, though, I can't lie about that. The sound effects in this game are a little hit or miss. There are missing audio cues for expected interactions such as ability flare screens, clicking certain menu options, and just generally has a flat, lifeless feeling in battles where you'd expect a lot more flash and sound design. Even in the dialogue scenes, where the game page advertises voice-acted cutscenes, yet most of the dialogue I came across was silent text, with an occasional character making grunts here and there. This style is great, and I'd love to see more of this. It just felt like there were some glaring oversights or downright failure to deliver on the audio presentation here. This sadly created a bit of disjointedness right off the bat when playing. I entered into the tutorial section and almost thought something was wrong with my game download, as some actions didn't produce sounds and the game just felt like it wasn't properly executing certain sound effects. This is just apparently how the game is designed as of right now, and I would really hope that they put some refining into this aspect, as it's not a real-time action game, so having an immersive sound design can make a big difference in the engagement of the gameplay. It is a mouse game, however, the chore of having to drag and drop almost everything in the game to enact your actions, from equipping items, to upgrading skills, to choosing what attack to throw at an enemy, it just becomes a bit of a tedious feeling with a mechanic that could just be simplified to a simple point-and-click system. Some parts of the game loop showed no indication of things needing to be clicked, leaving me to awkwardly wait a while before realizing the game wanted me to make a choice, which by the way wasn't even accommodated by any confirmation sound effect or anything. It was just strangely silent. The skill in games like these is the same as in games like Slay the Spire or Darkest Dungeon. It's about managing incoming attacks and paying attention to what buffs and debuffs are in play, along with what cards or actions you have at your disposal to maximize damage. Because a game like this often uses turn-based telegraphing, where enemy attacks are told to you before they happen, you really will only have yourself to blame for falling victim to surprises. This is good for allowing the player a proper chance to be in control, but it does take away a bit of the spontaneity, so I wouldn't call it a high skill ceiling, but in all fairness, I don't think it was ever intending to be. It's common for demos to have hand-holding in their tutorials, and of course on first play you normally choose a tutorial to make sure you don't miss anything, but for the sake of the review, the constant dialogue and explanation of common systems did feel like it bogged down the flow of the enjoyment. Granted, this was mostly in the first 3 encounters, and I'm sure the main game has a much more seamless experience. The boss fight took no more than 4 turns, and I sustained nearly 0 damage. Granted, there is a difficulty slider, but for the default setting, this all seemed far too easy to feel challenging enough to sink into. Collecting all the creatures could be a fun achievement, and the 12-year-old Pokemon fanatic in me definitely sees the appeal here. I mean, it's got all the bells and whistles you would want in a game that begs you to come back to complete its story. Though it doesn't seem to offer daily or dynamic challenges, it does have a procedural mode that could be fun for experimenting with the various heroes and skills. I would say that once you finish the game's story mode, however, you would probably have had your fill by then. I really did enjoy what this game has going for it aesthetically. I think it's got all the makings of a great franchise, and I'd absolutely love to see this thing get a Netflix series or something to that effect. There are a few influences worn on the cuff here, but nothing that detracts from what the game is trying to do. It's also a bit hard to separate the game's obvious intention of mimicking a cartoon show from the fact that it's actually a video game. It perhaps would perform better as the former, as it does seem to have a lot of exposition it wants to convey, when I would just rather get to the battling part. But for being unique, it is certainly a concept that stylistically feels fresh, while borrowing the skeleton of popular games from the same genre, and not necessarily improving or expanding on them. For a demo, I did sadly find this to be a little too timid and tame to be fully engaging. It's possibly from burnout on games like these that often play the exact same and yet still treat the player like there's tons of nuance to be digested. It's a slight personal gripe, but older games with much more complex systems did just fine by showing and not telling, or by telling through less cumbersome and more immersive means, through UI and visual cues rather than text-heavy menu screens for obvious mechanics. Games are more fun when you mess around and find out rather than having to read a manual before being able to play in the sandbox. This game seems to play it very safe, even paint by the numbers, in a way that somewhat hindered the ability to engage with its systems. I never really felt in danger of losing, and the demo felt more like a stage presentation than an actual slice of the game. Dimensional's strengths lie in its absolutely stunning visual style, with an animation that is top-notch to boot and a very kid-friendly atmosphere that's inviting and has tons of charm. Its cons, however, lie in the lacking sound design that left a lot to be desired, with a disjointed presentation that feels like it needs a little bit of glue, and the constant use of this drag-and-drop action system, which gets a bit tedious after a while. With an expected price tag of $20 to $30, for all its impressive artwork and emphasis on story, the game here itself is a bit rigid and carbon copy for my taste. That's not to say that it's bad, as most games are essentially just copies in some form, but Dimensional seems to have its strengths in the fact that it's a really enticing IP draped over the structure of a standard turn-based deck builder, with not a ton to offer in terms of interesting mechanics. Again, this is just based off the demo I played and could be entirely a fault of the way the demo is presented. So if you like how this game looks, and want to see how the story unfolds, I think you can find some good fun in the gameplay. It's very clear that Dimensionals has massive talent and care behind it, and that the team at Mino Games really believes in what they have. I had sworn I'd seen mention of them expanding this thing into physical toy merchandise and even having an accompanying animated TV series in the style of a Saturday morning cartoon. I really do hope this thing does well. It seems to certainly deserve a chance to shine. Hopefully the current landscape can provide for it. Thank you for watching this episode of Demo. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe below, and we will catch you in the next one.